But that's the corporations. Of course the corporations are going to do this. Why didn't the university scientists step up and say anything? Why? Because universities, who funds the universities? And the scientists that work in universities and the students, the grad students, where do they plan to go work when they graduate? Either for the government or for corporations. So if corporations are suppressing knowledge, then the universities who are vulnerable, who depend on them for donations and support, are also going to suppress the knowledge. And even if you're at a public university, if you ever intend to get out of that public university and go into the private sector or into the government sector, what's going to happen? If you've been publishing and asserting information that goes against the interest of the multinational corporations. So if the corporation says we're going to suppress this evidence and this science, so the universities will too. And then the same thing for the government. The government is supposed to rule over and regulate corporations. But we all know the politicians depend on the wealthy people who own controlling shares in the corporation, depend on them to fund their campaigns, to fund both of the political parties in the U.S. are funded by the public. Or back in the day, the main funders of the Democratic Party in the post-World War II era were labor unions. But labor unions, because they betrayed their values, started to align with the corporations. So the labor unions that worked in the auto plants, the auto workers union or the steel workers union, which needed the coal to make the steel, they decided, well, if the corporations get played and don't make profit, then what's going to happen to the workers? They're going to lay us off. So even the public sector, even the corrupt labor unions decided, hey, screw the environment, screw our grandchildren, screw our descendants. Let's get this paper. Let's make this money. And so the major research organizations for over a century would turn over this evidence to people in positions of authority and power in the public and private sector, and the people in the public and private sector would shred it, would bury it, would edit it and rewrite it and distort it. They would hire public relations campaigns to tell the public, it's all in your head. All these crazy conspiracy theories for the few principled scientists that would come out, like Rachel Carson, who came out and said, I don't care, you can ruin my career, you can fire me, you can kick me out of my laboratory, I'm going to tell the truth. And they were called tree-hugging hippies. Weirdos. They were called communists. This was during the Cold War era. Oh, global warming is nothing but a communist plot. And then they even went to the churches. They went to the church and pushed that whole, we have dominion over the earth. Man has dominion over the earth. And God's going to come and rapture us anyway. So what do we care? By the time all this falls down, the rapture will come upon us. And the righteous will be called up to sit with Christ. And only the wicked will have to deal with forest fires and ocean acidification. This is God's plan. God and this apocalyptic religion. Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, these apocalyptic religions. One day the world will be obliterated anyway, and the righteous will go on to some other plane of existence. But here they are. Here we are. So finally the scientists said, it's enough with us doing our research, writing up these files, writing up these reports, binding them, and then giving them over to people in authority. Now the scientists are finally trying to come directly to the people, which they should have done a century ago. Go get a late pass. They're more than 100 years behind. And now we're in an irreversible climate collapse, ecosystem collapse, mass extinction. They're 100 years late. Drought, flooding. They're 100 years late. You can't say better late than never. Late equals never in some instances. And so 11,000 scientists have said, listen, we're in a climate crisis. We're in a climate crisis is an existential crisis. White people have destroyed the life-sustaining capacity of the earth. This is Western culture. This is Western capitalism. This is Western philosophy. This came from white people. And I think somebody should be on the book saying this is a white problem. Bad enough we had to deal with colonization, genocide, slavery, perpetual warfare. That was not enough. Now the very destruction of the life-sustaining capacity of the earth has been threatened because white people have imposed their culture and value system, their worldview, their social theories, their methods and means of production, their systems of value and worth and currency on the rest of the world. And they love to say, well, China is the #1 carbon emitter. China emits the top greenhouse gases. But that's not true. When you're looking at per capita emissions, it's the United States, not China. China has 1 billion people, over 1 billion citizens, whereas the United States has less than 500 million. The United States doesn't even have 500 million. So the United States is the world's #1 emitter, the world's #1 carbon polluter. And why is China even involved in this? Why does China have nuclear bombs? Why does China have all these damn factories? Why is China engaged, a communist country, one of the top capitalist trade and one of the top producers of capitalist goods? Because China was under centuries of European invasion. So the situation that China evolved into was forced on it from the outside. The same thing in Africa, in India. Every civilization you look around the world, the New World, you look at Australia, Africa, China, India, even the archipelagos and the Pacific Islands, we find evidence of civilizations that predate Europe for thousands of years. The Native Americans, and they came up with this mythology that everybody outside of Europe simply just dwelled in their spaces. We simply lived in the jungles. Africans were living in the jungles, and Indians were running across the plains living in teepees. That the Pacific Islanders would just jump in the water and catch fish with their teeth and sit on the beach. When they weren't surfing and eating coconuts, they would catch fish. They gave this myth. Europeans went around the world slaughtering everybody, burning libraries, mutilating and murdering scholars and griots to destroy the history that no, humans created ecological civilizations. They were able to build up mass metropolis, mass cosmopolitan cities. They were able to set up global trade routes between Africa and the so-called New World before there was ever any such thing as Europe. And they did it without destroying the ecosystem. We all know about the grandeur of Egypt, but what about Kush, the Fulani, the Zulus, all over? But you look, you even go to the most well-known ancient civilization on the African continent in Egypt, and the Nile crocodile, the rhinoceros, the lions, the giraffes, they're all still there. How are Africans, Asians, Native Americans, Aboriginal people, even Inuits, how are these people able to develop civilizations without destroying ecosystems? The European destroyed ecosystems before he even got to split the atom and make the nuclear bomb. Back when they had primitive civilizations, the Greeks and the Romans cutting everything down, slaughtering lions, putting lions and other animals and bulls in arenas to kill for pleasure. Even pre-Christian Europe, they had this idea of dominion and control and hierarchy of species. That man was somehow a supreme being, endowed with the right to kill whatever he wanted for his pleasure or for his needs. So all of this physical destruction on the earth can be pointed and targeted at simple ideologies. Primitive, bestial, barbaric ideologies. And I'm just saying this because we got to fix it. But I'm just saying this because now we're going to hear about mankind, humanity. When it came time to divvy up the riches of the world, nobody was saying the riches of the world belong to humanity. The wealth of the world belongs to mankind. No, they got copyrights, trademarks. The riches of the world belong to me. They're mine. But the blame is all of ours. And y'all let them run that game. I see black people talk about humanity. We just don't know how to act. Humankind is greedy. Humankind is war. No, it ain't humankind. There's a very specific ideological system that imposed itself on anybody. Europeans went around the world and said, get with this program or die. And a lot of people chose death. They didn't choose death. They chose resistance, and they were murdered for it. But read Destruction of Black Civilization. They come, they fight, and if they lose, they go back and develop greater weapons. I mean, Western development has been nothing more than a succession of developing more elaborate ways to kill as many people as efficiently as possible. Gunboats and cannons to nuclear bombs. And you go look at Boston Dynamic videos. Now they created these great robots. And did they make the robots to do surgery? Did they make the robots to go into nuclear sites and do nuclear cleanup like in Fukushima so that humans don't have to go there? Did they make robots to do disaster rescue, underwater rescue? No, they made robots, and the first thing they did with the damn robots was put a gun in the robot's hand. And they got these videos of these robots, these machines shooting targets, and they're pushing it, knocking the damn robot over while the robot shoots the targets. Most of the technology we enjoy now, it started off as something to kill people with, or to aid in the killing. Radios, radio frequencies, was developed by the military, by DARPA, to help them target better and to kill people. Internet technology came out of the military. Wireless technology, fiber optics, facial recognition, all this stuff that you enjoy in your leisure, microwave, all came as an instrument. And then they reformat it, they restructure it, and give it to the civilians after they've mobilized it and weaponized it. That is a very distinct philosophy. Urugu, the Iceman's inheritance. 500 years of European behavior, and I just have to push that. Because now that we've got scientists, we've got politicians, we've got leaders, we even got the freaking pedophile Pope. And now we got all these prominent, powerful white people that are now going to talk about climate change and talk about how mankind needs to change his ways. No, only one type of man, only one kind of man needs to change his ways because we had figured it out. If you get off our necks, if you relieve us of our debts and obligations, if you take away and retool and deconstruct your nuclear infrastructures and call home your troops, call home your aircraft carriers, your machine boats, call home your drones and let people return to their original ways of living. If you would end the global empire. But they're not going to do that. But every time you turn on TV, or you pick up a magazine or a newspaper, or you're in a classroom or just talking in public and somebody talks about what mankind, what the humanity has done to the earth, No, this situation, even if we all go extinct, which there is a great potential that there won't be one fully formed human being on the face of this earth, or primate, or higher level mammal. We'll be lucky if bacterial life forms can survive this. Let it be known in the ether that white people did this. Western culture, the philosophies, the worldview that come out of Greece, Rome, from Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Nietzsche, these philosophies, these economic systems, this worldview has a very specific point of origin. Man's dominion over earth. And I'm just sick of going around hearing mankind. My ancestors didn't want any part of this. There is no culture on the face of the earth that came to Europe and said, please teach us your ways. Please show us your ways. We want to adopt your way of living. That hasn't happened anywhere. Anytime in history. And somebody, well, what is the difference does it make? It makes a lot of difference. Because the same people that put us in this problem are now trying to profit off of the problem and sell us solutions. And y'all going to buy the solutions. But we for a long time now, we love seeing our oppressor as our savior. We love seeing our oppressor as our savior. But things could be looking up. The world, entire planet, is in open revolt. There isn't any major city anywhere in the world that doesn't have an undercurrent of revolt. Even in the United States, we got a Democratic governor of Kentucky. I mean, I'm waiting for I'm going to be ducking because I think pigs are flying and hell has frozen over. We got a Democratic governor of Kansas. And I know some of y'all so hip, some of y'all so WOKE, that this stuff doesn't matter to you, but these things freaking matter. This freaking matters, that there is some shift. And a minor shift, the shift is a shift. And I mean, the revolt in the United States, Trump went to a UFC. And UFC is a racist body. Look how they treated Anderson Silva or Rampage Jackson. Every time the UFC gets a black champion, John Bones Jones, they start acting funny. Like they don't like having black champions. But you don't put nothing you don't set up a sport that's related to, coordination and finesse and brothers and sisters. They got sisters out there flipping. Y'all better, I told white folks, if they want to win in sports, they got to go like ski jump off mountains and stuff. They did that extreme sports. They had to go do that because they were sick of. And even if it's not a black person that's going to dominate, it's a Central and Eastern European, some Ukrainian, some Kazakh's going to come and dominate. And white folks don't see the Kazakhs and the Eastern Europeans as fully white. And I've talked about this, about the myth of white unity, how white people ain't white people among white people. White people are white people to black people and other non-white people, but white people ain't all white to white. Yeah, I know, it's stupid, it's complex and stupid, but it's the reality that governs the world. I digress. Anyway, Trump goes to a UFC fight, which is a haven for racist and white nationalists. Neo-Nazis, they love these extreme fighting, this brutality. They like to think they're themselves. They think they're Nordic people. They think they're Vikings. So that's why Trump went. Trump really thought to himself, a bunch of drunk, young white boys, this is the alt-right. So he walks in there and they boo him. And there were some people cheering, some alt-right neo-Nazis in the UFC thing. If you've ever been to a UFC fight or if you follow the UFC, you know racists love that sport, the blood sport. And there are some very prominent UFC fighters, even champions, who are MAGA heads, who are initiated into the cult of Trump. So Trump's staff thought, yeah, you'll make a public appearance at a UFC fight, and just for some love.